Live from the Sydney Opera House. Esso Night at the Opera. The Australian Opera and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation present The Daughter of the Regiment. The performance is introduced from the Opera Theatre by Andrew Olley.
And a very warm welcome to the Sydney Opera House. One of the endearing things about opera is the sometimes improbable casting. More often than not, the story revolves around the trials and tribulations of a beautiful young thing. And more often than not, the nymphette is played by, shall we say, a mature woman, for the very good reason that that's how the best voices are usually packaged. In tonight's opera, The Daughter of the Regiment, the comely teenager of the title is portrayed by the grande dame of opera, Joan Sutherland. Dame Joan first sang the role 20 years ago at Covent Garden, yet today the great diva is probably more comfortable in the part than ever. The years have provided the dignity and wit to carry it all off without the burden of self-consciousness. There was a charming illustration of this at rehearsal the other day. Her husband, conductor Richard Bonynge, suggested Dame Joan avoid the harsher lighting on stage. "Darling," she responded, "there's no hiding the fact that I'm a grandmother, not a teenager." Dame Joan's sense of fun is well placed in this comic opera. The Daughter of the Regiment is a rather frothy piece set in the early 19th century at the height of Bonaparte's power. It's in French, but the composer is Italian. Donizetti wrote it in Paris in 1840, and so successful was he in conveying a Gallic flavour that for many years it was a set piece on that most patriotic of French celebrations, Bastille Day. When Dame Joan Sutherland first played Marie, the Daughter of the Regiment, all those years ago at Covent Garden, Richard Bonynge was the conductor, and the director was Sandro Sequi. The trio came together for another major production of The Daughter at the Met in New York in 1973, and we're fortunate indeed that this fearsome threesome teams up again here in Sydney tonight. Not surprisingly, the Opera House was filled to capacity weeks in advance for tonight's performance, and there's a good deal of expectant shifting in the seat at the moment. While we're waiting for Richard Bonynge to take up the baton, let me tell you something of the plot in The Daughter of the Regiment, although there will of course be subtitles, just in case your French is a little rusty.
When the curtain rises on the first act, a group of Tyrolean villagers is watching with great apprehension as elements of Napoleon's army manoeuvre in the valley below. Among the crowd is the Marquise of Berkenfield, who's been stranded in the village on the way back to her chateau. Her steward, Hortensius, is attending her, but he can offer little comfort. When a lookout gives the all clear, there's general celebration. But the villagers' delight turns to flight as a group of soldiers from the French 21st Regiment appears on the mountain. Their sergeant, Sulpice, leads his men into this suddenly deserted spot where they are joined by Marie, the regiment's adopted daughter. Marie's been with them ever since she was found as an infant abandoned on the battlefield. She's now their vivandière, a woman who follows the army about with a little cart filled with supplies for the troops. Just as Marie is telling Sulpice about a young local she's met, the young man himself turns up. But Tonio is immediately seized by the regiment under suspicion of spying. After Marie has explained that Tonio saved her from falling over a cliff, his grateful captors relax their guard and he escapes. Tonio manages to catch Marie alone and the couple declare their love for each other. Later, as the regimental corporal parades his men, Tonio joins the unit so he can win Marie's hand. But then Marie learns that she's the Marquise's long-lost niece. She must go away to become a lady of rank and fortune, and the newly enlisted Tonio must stay behind with the regiment.
Well, any moment now, the audience here in the Sydney Opera House will welcome Richard Bonynge into the pit, and perhaps it's timely to remind you that you can hear the performance simultaneously in stereo on ABC FM. To complement Donizetti's musical scene setter and to help capture the mood of the period, we're going to see some illustrations from a rare and beautiful French children's book also set in the Napoleonic period. It tells the story of a heroine whose circumstances were very similar to Marie's.
And now here is Richard Bonynge.
la marquise. Avais-tu et quelques arguments? Parle-lui, savoir si surprise. Hélas, c'est pire que moi. L'ennemi s'avance, l'ennemi s'avance. soldat.
Je suis là pour vous défendre, madame, pour vous protéger.
Allez, assurez-vous s'il n'y a plus de danger. Je vous attends. Et surtout, veillez bien sur ma voiture, mon or, mes bijoux.
Oui, madame la marquise.
Mes amis, je ne vous quitte pas. Je ne vous quitte pas. Je vous confie mon honneur.
Sacré nom d'une pipe! Quelle chambre, quand il se gagne là, ouais, dans ce tremblin, nous verrons mettre tes partout. La proclamation est plus claire que le jour. Nous protégeons les hommes quand ils vont au phare. Et toutes les femmes, quand elles sont jolies, mais qui vient? Tiens, Marie, notre fille, l'honneur et la gloire, la peur du 21e. La voilà, morble qu'elle est gentille, est-il le régiment qui possède une telle fille?
Oh, régiment, j'en suis fière, voyez-vous, c'est nous dans le métier sincère, à veiller sur mes jeunes hommes.
N'est-ce pas?
C'est lui seul qui m'a servi de père et de famille et de parole.
N'est-ce pas?
C'est sans la terre, je crois que je l'ai fait honneur.
Oui, comme un ange, elle est jolie.
Et comme un soldat, j'ai du cœur, du cœur.
Duchess, jamais n'aurait de ces manières-là. Jamais, 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 jamais. Au prix de la guerre, elle le jour. Et sans le faire, le sang de France de temps, l'amour.
Sans craindre, ma gloire, je marche. Sans craindre
la gloire et la marche de son patrie. Voilà son refrain. Patrie, victoire. Désolé. Patrie, victoire. providence. Enfant, que je t'as dans mes bras, quand t'écris romper le silence de nos corps ou de nos bifroids.
Chacun de vous, à votre père sous son corps,
Et bonjour,
les cheveux, et pour garçon, votre formez-vous.
où tu dormais paisiblement.
Oh, je dormais
Au ton prix du tambour battant.
mais maintenant que je suis folle, comment l'avez-vous
C'est la
volé?
consigne. On recommande à toutes per rester.
Au jour de fête au tout ravage, comme chaume.
Au blesseront dans le courage, haussera le main de vainqueur.
Et puis le soir, à le côté, qui vous égaye par son chant,
Qui nous excite et nous routine. Chrétien, c'est encore notre enfant.
et son régiment, de l'enfer, qui n'a pas de capacité. On m'a fait passer, faites-vous bien.
Nommé à l'unanimité. Vivandière, nommé à l'unanimité.
Oui, je ne cloue, à nos batailles, s'il fallait, je marcherai.
Elle marcherait,
Je prendrai la mitraille, et comme vous, je me battrai.
elle se battrait.
Au dégladier de son père, je fais de bruit.
Oui, elle tient de sien.
Je marcherai,
Elle marcherait,
je me battrai.
elle se battrait.
En avant,
En avant,
c'est le cri du régiment.
c'est le cri du régiment. En avant, en avant.
J'ai réussi, le jour, à gauche, et vert. Le son de tambour, le son de tambour, retaplo, 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 retaplo,
Et maintenant, Marie, j'ai à te parler. Tes camarades racontent que depuis quelque temps, nous semblons les éviter. Et ils ont vu quelqu'un parler souvent avec toi.
Eh bien, c'était un jeune homme, un Tyrolien, qui m'a sauvé la vie.
Qui t'a sauvé la vie? Comment?
Je te dirai.
Alors, à l'entraîne.
C'est lui.
Et quoi? C'est l'étranger qui t'aime.
Ah, pour mon cœur, quel trouble extrême!
Qui vous emmène pour
s'agit d'autre que vous. C'est peut-être qui peut-être bien connaître nos secrets, mérite la justice et provise au procès. Écoutons le chant du régiment.
Il est là, il est là.
Cornet.
Il est là. Il est là.
Cornet.
Il est là.
Je me suis envolé, le sergent a hurlé comme un fou.
Ton père?
Non, certes non, cet autre.
C'est mon père.
Mais non, le vieux.
C'est aussi mon père.
Voyons, Marie, avez-vous donc pour père tout un régiment?
C'est juste, le régiment est mon père adoptif.
Ah, par exemple, cela nous change bien des choses.
Et pourquoi, après m'avoir quitté, pourquoi m'avez-vous suivi?
Oh, par exemple, je meurs de tourment, parce que je vous aime et je mourrai plutôt de vous perdre, vous le savez, Marie, je vous aime. Si je vous aime, écoutez, écoutez et jugez vous-même.
Voyons, écoutons, écoutons et jugeons.
Depuis l'instant où dans mes bras je vous rassigne toute tremblante, votre image douce et charmante, nuit et jour ne s'arrache jamais pas.
Mais monsieur, c'est de la mémoire, c'est de la mémoire, et voilà tout.
Attendez, attendez, vous n'êtes pas au bout à mes aveux, vous pouvez croire.
Voyons, écoutons, écoutons et jugeons.
Le beau pays de mon enfance, les amis que je chérissais, ah, pour vous, je le sens d'avance, sans peine je les quitterai.
Mais une telle différence est bien coupable, bien coupable, bien coupable, bien coupable, sûrement.
Et puis enfant de votre absence, ne pouvant vaincre le tourment, j'ai bravé jusque dans ce temps le coup d'une balle ennemie. J'ai bravé dans ce camp le coup d'une balle ennemie, ne pouvant vaincre le tourment de votre absence.
Donnez-moi des jours pour le monsieur. Confirme son existence. Entendez-vous, monsieur? C'est un drôle en ce jour, ne sait pas se défendre, car c'est de l'amour, de l'amour, de l'amour, de l'amour.
Ah, c'est un peu si pendant son cœur en ce jour ne peut pas se défendre de corps mon amour. Mais c'est un peu si tendre dans son cœur en ce jour, dans son cœur en ce jour ne peut pas se défendre de corps mon amour. Non, 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 de corps mon amour, mon amour. Non, non, ne peut pas se défendre de corps mon amour. non, non, ne fais pas d'effort, car c'est
Rien que la vie me fait mal l'honneur.
C'est madame la marquise qui demande de vous parler.
C'est madame la marquise.
Oui, monsieur le capitaine.
Merci.
Voilà ce que c'est.
Silence, Dorénant! Madame me faisait l'honneur de me dire...
Monsieur le capitaine.
Merci.
Renonçons de mon voyage, je voulais retourner dans mon château. Mais nos montagnes sont emplies de soldats et j'ai peur.
Vous êtes bien bon, Madame la Marquise.
J'ai donc pensé que les Français étant aussi galants que braves, vous ne refuserez pas de me faire protéger jusqu'à mon château.
À combien d'ici?
De cette montagne, on peut apercevoir les tours de Berkenfield.
De
Berkenfield!
Permettez, Madame la Marquise, votre château, vous le nommez?
Eh bien, de même nom que moi.
Berkenfield!
Sacrebleu! Pardon. Quel rapport entre ce nom-là et celui de Robert?
Plaît-il? Le capitaine Robert?
Vous l'avez connu?
Oh, beaucoup, monsieur. Oh, c'est-à-dire non pas moi, mais une personne de ma famille. Ma sœur, oui, monsieur, c'était ma sœur.
Et cette sœur?
Elle n'existe plus. Mais de son mariage avec ce Français, il n'a qu'un enfant.
Une fille!
Comment savez-vous? En effet, une pauvre enfant que le capitaine m'avait confiée avant de mourir. Elle était la seule héritière de ma fortune et de mon nom.
Votre nièce?
Qui serait baronne aujourd'hui?
Perdue, abandonnée, écrasée dans la foule. Morte, la pauvre enfant.
Sauvez! Sauvez, Madame de Crakentorp! Sauvez grâce à nous!
Oh, mon Dieu!
Sauvez,
Sauvez-moi!
vous dis-je, par de braves gens!
Oh, vous la connaissez?
Si je la connais,
Elle est loin d'ici.
à 2 pas.
Oh, monsieur, rendez-moi ma nièce, mon enfant. Conduisez-moi près d'elle. Mais vous avez la preuve, n'est-ce pas?
La preuve? Elle est là! Une lettre que je n'ai jamais pu lire.
Cette lettre est bien du capitaine Robert. Un instant, monsieur. Cet enfant est-elle digne de moi, du nom de Berkenfield?
Je crois, morbleu!
Elle a été élevée?
Dans des principes solides. Elle est très distinguée.
Oh, salaud! Oh, cochon!
Et la voilà!
Oh, sacre bleu! Oh, mon Dieu! Elle jure!
Quelle éducation!
Que dit donc cette dame?
Elle dit, mon enfant, que tu es sa nièce et que voilà ta tante.
Ma tante?
Oui.
Vous êtes ma tante? Pas possible! Sacre bleu! Eh bien, je vais vous présenter mon père.
Mais?
Le régiment tout entier!
Oh, plus tard, plus tard. Il faut l'enlever à ces gens-là.
Le plus vite possible!
Hortensius, demandez les chevaux à l'instant. Mademoiselle Marie. Il faut que vous repreniez désormais les titres et le rang qui vous conviennent. Et vous allez me suivre à l'instant.
Vous suivre? Les abandonner? Mes amis?
Je le désire, et au besoin, je le veux.
Et de quel droit, madame?
Du droit que votre malheureux père m'a donné sur vous en mourant.
Mon père?
Lisez, mon enfant.
Oh, madame!
Allons, de courage. Il le faut.
Eh bien, je partirai. Mais vous venez tous avec moi. Tous!
Oh, miséricorde, Régiment!
Nous verrons. Venez, ma nièce. Hâtez-vous, Hortensius.
Hâtez-vous, Hortensius.
joie et ses combats, vive la mort sur la sable. Oh la gloire, oh brave soldat, vive la guerre, vive la mort.
De ce matin, une nouvelle recrue, un nouveau soldat.
Mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. L'amour qui m'a tourné la tête, désormais me rend héros. Ah, quel bonheur! Oui, mes amis, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. Oui, seul pour qui je respire, à mes voeux un uni sourire, et ce doux espoir de bonheur tremble ma raison et mon cœur. À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. Je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux, je vais marcher. À mes amis, je vais marcher sous vos
J'ai camarade et demeure.
Et c'est en vous seul que j'espère.
C'est notre mort que tu meurs.
Écoutez-moi, moi. Monsieur son père, écoutez-moi, car je sais qu'il n'est pas de vous, de me rendre ici, ça n'est pas.
Notre fille, qui nous est chère, n'est pas pour la mélanie. Non, il lui faut un meilleur parti. Il lui faut un meilleur parti. Telle est la volonté d'un père.
Vous refusez
Complètement. Manière des complices.
à notre régiment. Mais j'en suis, puisqu'en cet instant, je vais à la mode agir pour cela seulement.
Tant pis pour toi.
Monsieur son père,
Tant pis pour toi.
mais votre fille en meurt.
Se pourrait-il voir notre part?
Elle m'aime, vous dis-je, j'en fais serment.
Et quoi, notre mari?
Elle m'aime, j'en fais serment.
suis. Impossible vraiment. N'es-tu pas engagé? Au doleur, au surprise, elle quitte ses lieux. Au diable la Marquise qui la met pas dans le. Au doleur, au surprise, elle quitte ses lieux. Au diable la Marquise qui la met pas dans le. On s'en va à la guerre, on s'en va à la guerre. Mais le nom c'est enfant, mais le nom c'est enfant. On s'en va à la guerre, mais le nom c'est enfant.
So, with the bottom apparently fallen from the world of both our hero and heroine, the curtain falls on the first act of this Australian opera production of Donizetti's The Daughter of the Regiment. Joan Sutherland is singing the title role of Marie, with Anson as Tonio, Heather Begg as the Marquise, and Gregory Yurisich as Sulpice. The Elizabethan Sydney Orchestra is conducted by Richard Bonynge. The sets, incidentally, are by Henry Barden, and Michael Stennett designed the costumes.
Well, the Daughter of the Regiment has only 2 acts, so there'll be just this one interval. And while the cast and crew prepare for the finale, we're going to meet the young talent waiting in the wings of Australian opera. Our interval feature introduces some of the star performers from the opera of tomorrow.
Well, opera, to my mind, is the consummate art form. I mean, you can go to theatre and you can enjoy theatre, and yes, it includes some sort of music. But when you add that extra element of singing, you've got something very special. I mean, especially in something like Magic Flute, for example. Mozart's music seems to just set it apart. It becomes something much, much greater than a play. In Marriage of Figaro, for example, the original play is a very well-crafted piece of theatre, but you suddenly add that extra dimension of the orchestral sound and emotion coming out of people's mouths, and it seems to just make it great in some way. So for me, it is the consummate art form, I think. Have to be. Otherwise I wouldn't be working in it.
The thing that really excites me about conducting is being able to make the final, ultimate artistic decisions about a piece. Being able to bring a piece to life, a piece that you've studied, worked on, prepared, and then being able to give it that last little something that makes it live for the audience. That's what really gets me going.
Opera is one world alone. It's very different from other forms of composition, from abstract composition. You're dealing generally with a much bigger audience. The audience is more interested in going a bit further into what you're trying to say. You can get away with, I suppose, music which otherwise they may not be so interested in.
To go from being nothing, struggling, to being chosen as one of Australia's up-and-coming young singers, it's opened lots of doors for me. It's given me the opportunity to work with some of the greatest professionals in Australia, some of the greatest names in the world.
It's fascinating working with singers. You develop a certain trust and a certain relationship with your singers, which is essential because you have to be constantly criticising them and correcting them. And then when it's necessary, praising them when maybe it might not be deserved, but a little encouragement goes a long way. It's 80% psychology and 20% music a lot of the time. But it's possibly the most fascinating area of the work and the one in which you see the most immediate results. There have traditionally been two ways to become a conductor. One was working your way up through the ranks of the violin section of an orchestra, up to becoming concertmaster and then stepping onto the platform. That was out of the question for me because I never played the violin. But I chose the traditional way of working through an opera company, where one goes through being a repetiteur, being an accompanist, working with the singers, coaching, prompting, conducting backstage. Finally, with a bit of luck, you make it to the podium. That's the alternative way to going via the concert platform. And because I've always enjoyed working so much with singers, it was a fairly natural progression for me to make. I hope to continue working in the two fields that I seem to have done mainly up till now, which is essentially light opera, operetta, musical comedy, and more importantly, much more importantly, the Australian music, contemporary music scene. I've been very involved with the Australian Opera's contemporary music program. I coached Metamorphosis and Voss and conducting Mermaid, and involved with the preparation of the workshop. And I would hope to see that continue. As I've done some composition studies myself, I feel a certain affinity for Australian composers. And Then eventually I would like to move into the mainstream of operatic repertoire and eventually step onto the concert platform, but that's all a good way in the future.
Opera is a grand spectacle. There's no doubt about that. For a composer, you're dealing with... You not only have the potential of the visual medium, you also have the word, the text. Now, normally when you're writing pure abstract music, you're dealing solely with sound, and suddenly with a text and with the visual medium available, everything opens up. And generally also with opera or large-scale music theatre, you're dealing with a duration, a time span that's well beyond a normal piece, which might be only 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Suddenly you've got something an hour, 2 hours, and the audience is going to be involved. They're going to be able to focus on what you're trying to say. It is a much more exciting medium, and it's a very different way of composing. The 1985 National Opera Workshop, it was the first one of the workshops the Australian Opera has had, was a wonderful opportunity for me. 2 weeks of quite intense work with professional performers, the highest possible standard, singers, the calibre of John Pringle, Anson Austin, John Wagner for my opera. These people have had 20 years experience and they brought so much professionalism, so much understanding of my work far beyond what I thought I'd put into the work. I heard it through their performance. And John Regg, the producer, who like me was quite fascinated by traditional Japanese theatre and was quite keen to look into the possibilities of my work, the bamboo flute. I mean, the fact that it was a visual spectacle and we were dealing with the text, we were dealing with an emotion which one could relate to, one could really breathe it, feel this damn thing. And normally when you're dealing with abstract sound, you're dealing with emotional experience, but on another level. You're dealing solely with sound, and you're dealing with an expression of a composer. The audience doesn't quite know what's going on, but they can feel it, they can sense it, but they're not being told, so-and-so has just died. They're not sensing, they don't know exactly what you mean, but they're just, with abstract music, they're just sort of trying to sense it. I can't take many days off without becoming quite frustrated and wanting to sort of start creating something. Start pulling out paper and writing things down and structuring something, thinking about something. It's as though there's a part of me which needs to be always creating. And as long as that's involved in something, I can relax and be a normal person, the rest of me, as normal as possible.
I've done quite a lot of work now with the young artists, the people involved in the Young Artists program, and that's very exciting because you're working with people at one particular stage of their career, a very interesting stage. The voices are well developed but not finished. They're still learning a lot of theatre craft skills. They're musically fairly sound. But they're full of that tremendous energy. They're sort of one step further than an opera school environment. They're young principals with that sort of energy and that determination to take them this far, of course. And that's very exciting because we can work very closely together.
Well, I think the Young Artist Program is a very privileged thing, and I think my timing has probably been very lucky because it's something that's come into existence in the last few years, and it also has a great advantage, especially when you've been away from the scene, which I had been for 3 years, just been studying voice. It's a great opportunity to come in a slightly protected way, which for a short period of time, a period like a year, is very, very beneficial, because you can work your way back into the pattern again. And it is considerably different than being in the chorus.
Some of the young singers come straight from a music school or conservatoria or somewhere, or from private study, and they're hurled straight into the middle of a great number of people who are already perhaps on their way in the profession. It's by way of being rather a shock. And sometimes someone who has been there before them can guide the path and make it a little easier for them. My role in this program is to help them to get to the stage with as few bumps and jolts as possible. And I think most of all to enjoy what they do. The joy of the profession and the joy of singing is the thing that lasts a lifetime, we hope.
Well, I've always wanted to be a musician of some description. I won't say that I've always wanted to be an opera singer, because I haven't always wanted to be an opera singer. It's the blatant, honest truth. But I've come from a musical background and a long line of musicians, so it's in my blood, obviously. I've got a brother who's also an opera singer. I've got a father who teaches singing. So it was difficult to avoid, I suppose.
I will call you to your dressing rooms for notes with Brian Fitzgerald. At the end of the break, ladies and gentlemen of the chorus, I will call you to your dressing rooms for notes with Brian Fitzgerald.
Last year I was a poor struggling student in Queensland, not really knowing where I was going to be taken over the next couple of years. Of course, I won the Australian singing competition last year, and that changed the direction of my life straight away. 12 months ago, when I came down to Sydney for the Marty, for the Australian singing competition, and I obviously used to go to as many operas as I could in the time I was here. And every time I'd walk down to the opera house, I'd go, I'm going to work there one day, I'm going to work there one day. Well, God knows when, but I'm going to work there one day, you know. So to be walking into the opera house 12 months later, going in there to work, knowing that in half an hour's time I'm going to be sitting in the same room with Anson on one side and Joan Sutherland on the other, and looking at Richard Bonynge, looking at me. It was amazing. I was thinking to myself, it made my day, but I think it's made my life. There's not many young people who would get the opportunity to sing with Joan Sutherland. I never thought I'd do it in my lifetime, but I am.
I guess I've always had goals. I think probably the same as most young singers have, which is to be able to be in a position to sing wherever you want to sing. In other words, make the choice yours. How realistic that is, I don't really know, and I think that's one thing you have to always hold and be very careful. And then you have to work out where it fits in with the rest of your life. Are you going to be a singing machine? Is that going to be your life? Are there other aspects of your life? And at what points in time do you compromise? And I think that's the hardest. You know, you're thinking about somebody else, or, well, you're thinking about yourself in actual fact, your own self-person. And I think that is really hard, because you always have wonderful dreams about, I want to be singing at La Scala, I'd love to sing at the Metropolitan, I'd love to sing at the Garden, Paris Opera. No, that would be a lie to say that that wasn't what I wanted. But along the way, there are lots of things, and there's great advantages in being in a different position to that too. Those people don't have the wonderful, glamorous life that so many of us are led to believe. They stand up on the stage and they give absolutely everything inside them. Then they walk off the stage, and a lot of the time they have nothing except for a hotel room and a suitcase. That's a decision in itself, I think. A person's voice is very much an expression of what the person is like inside. And I think probably that's certain repertoire is repertoire that I can really relate to. And I'm sure in certain repertoire, that's when my voice has an added dimension. And, but I think on stage, sincerity and honesty and a direction, head for a direction of what you want to achieve on the stage. But I think if you're honest and sincere, and you get rid of your own inhibitions, your own fears, and you can really just take that music and those words and either use it vocally at a point in time or use it physically at a point in time. And I think that's certainly what my desire to do is, so that I can be an honest performer.
Having been a singer myself in my life, I thought, well, that's what it was all about, you know. But I really have found something that is so engrossing and very responsible, I feel, but so rewarding. You can't believe. I find myself when I'm sitting in the theatre and seeing a young singer performing, I really feel the same joy as I used to have on stage. And I think I think I've got the best job in the business, of course.
Use your hand, Jeffrey.
As far as directing an opera is concerned, it's a very different thing to be working on somebody else's work, as I am in The Magic Flute. I mean, I am recreating the original direction of Joan Javerfeld. So we're in slightly different territory. What I tried to do is to enthuse the artists with the same feeling that Mr. Javerfeld wanted out of the piece. You have to talk to the artists and try and create the same atmosphere that he wanted, sort of reality that he wanted. Myself, if I'm directing an opera, what I try and bring is a bit of youth and enthusiasm to the piece. I mean, I'm sick to death of going to opera and thinking it's the same old boring thing. What I try to get is a bit of excitement, a bit of life to it.
always be my love.
Shall we settle? Pete, isn't it just kneel down?
Yes,
kneel down next to it. Yeah.
Shall
we settle in a love coat?
Dream together in a love coat.
Within a love coat, within a love coat. Right, and to get closer to her, you tap the ground in front of you and say, come on. For a couple. Yeah, right. You can snuggle your head into her or anything that just shows that you've finally got the girl of your dream. We will hatch some little birds and we will have some little birds. The hardest part I find as a director working on an opera is that you have to work on it so many months in advance. Because of times of getting the set together and whatever, you have to be totally clear the way you want the piece to develop, the way you want the piece to look a year in advance. So in that respect, I think it is quite difficult, but very exciting, being a director, because you have to have an intimate knowledge of the piece, and you have to be so totally sure about what you want out of that production and out of each rehearsal. Today, for example, I was determined that Geoffrey Black was going to be totally blocked in Magic Flute. You know, we would know where he was going geographically on stage, but now all the work has to start. Now we have to mould the production. We have to put his particular brand of charm into an established production. We have to make it work again. You have to mould the other performances around that so that it becomes a whole again rather than a whole.
No turn around, so she must be there.
Well, I'm going slowly at the moment. I mean, I have a couple of productions next year, and I'll just take things as they come, I think. I once said that I never wanted to do any of the grand operas, but I think I'm changing, getting more emotional in my old age. But no, I mean, I don't think there's anything I particularly want to do. By the time I'm 50, I will do a Magic Flute, as good as this one, hopefully.
We have an enormous amount of talent. And the fact that we now have theatres, operatic theatres in the country, and we have schools, conservatoria that are giving a lot of attention to this art form. And there are more than enough young singers to go around. And the public too. The past isn't very interesting unless it has some bearing on the present, I think. But I can remember in this company going out onto the stage and seeing theatres half full and thinking, oh, it's not such a bad night. But now, if we see empty seats, we think, goodness me, what's happened? Because there is such an interest. It's become part of the life of many, many people all over the country. And I think the young singers are assured, really, of a future here.
12 months ago, my goals were to be a professional opera singer. I'm now a professional opera singer. Obviously, I've always, throughout my whole life, set goals. Obviously, the only way you get anywhere in life is to set yourself goals and little challenges and beat that one and find a bigger one, or whatever. So I set myself that challenge, and it came about a little bit quicker than I imagined. So I take that as a total advantage. And hopefully, if I can get to the Australian Opera this early, then I'll still have a bit of fire left in me if I ever get to somewhere like Covent Garden, hopefully.
Oh, the thing that always inspires me about great conductors is that there is no doubt in their minds as to how the music should sound, that oral picture is present. before the sound happens, so there is no doubt as to what sort of sounds should be created. I mean, that's fundamental for all aspects of performing, but as a conductor you have to think about it that little bit more in advance, and then make that happen through your rehearsal work and then finally through your gestures. That's what's really inspiring. There's no doubt in their minds as to that chord should sound just like that. That's quite something.
Yes, it is a very different situation for a violinist or a pianist who may be rehearsing 6 hours a day for that one performance or for that other performance, learning a piece. It is the same sort of intensity, but a composer naturally is working that long, if not more, 8 or 10 hours a day on his composition. It's not as intense, the performance, but it's still a struggle because the composer, he may know he's having one performance, but that may be it. He's spending, or he or she, 3, 6 months, whatever, writing this piece and thinking, I might hear this once. I might get a recording of it. And that's the end of it. But that's not what it's about. It's an experience that composing is an experience. If you've got to do it, you've got to do it. You can't escape from that. If you try and stop composing, you just go nuts.
But all you can do is do what you can do, and you hope that the audience likes what you're doing. But you can't actually play to please the audience. You can only hope that what you're doing pleases them indirectly. But obviously the audience, that's who you're performing to. Those are the people who you're taking out of their realms of work they've been sitting at all day. You're taking them into another dimension, and they want that, but they want it done honestly, I think. And so obviously incredibly important, yes. And they're a positive thing as opposed to a frightening thing. I think they're not an obstacle at all. I had a teacher once who said to me to think of the people I was singing to as a bag of cabbages. See, I think that's a great mistake. I think if you started thinking that, you might as well not do it at all. You should do it in the bathroom.
I've been very lucky. I've fallen into opera and I've adored the whole thing. I shudder to think, actually, what I would have done had I not gone into opera now. Would have liked to have been an actor, but you saw me today, so I don't think it's very likely.
And welcome back to the Opera Theatre. While you've been enjoying our interval feature, the production crew here has been working feverishly behind the scenes. I think the stage is now almost set for the second and final act of The Daughter of the Regiment. Before Richard Bonynge returns to the podium, though, we've just time to sketch a quick outline of the action ahead.
The second act takes place at the chateau of the Marquise. Almost a year has passed. Marie has been obliged to take a crash course in grooming. But under the influence of Sulpice, who's been allowed to accompany the Daughter of the Regiment, she occasionally slips back into the military ways of her past. This comes to the fore in the singing lesson which we see near the beginning of the act. Marie has good cause to be sentimental on this particular day. The Marquise has betrothed Marie to the most elevated nobleman in Germany, the Duke of Crakentorp, and this evening his mother, the Duchess, is coming to sign the marriage contract. Marie has reluctantly agreed to the match, but the fortuitous arrival of the old 21st under its new commander, Tonio, proves quite unsettling. Tonio puts his case for Marie's hand to the Marquise, but she refuses. There are a few more twists to the plot before finally, in the best romantic tradition, Tonio's regiment interrupts the contract signing ceremony in the nick of time.
Well, the contract signing ceremony might be interrupted in the nick of time, but unfortunately, in the nick of time, they're not quite ready for us here backstage. They're still putting the finishing touches to this splendid set, which will open the second act of The Daughter of the Regiment. In the meantime, perhaps I could reflect on a book that's just come out called The Joan Sutherland Album. We've just been talking in our interval feature, of course, about the young opera stars of tomorrow. Well, it's quite interesting to hear what Richard Bonynge has to say in the foreword to this Joan Sutherland album. about young singers and whether or not they're going to be the stars of tomorrow. He says, and I quote, "Many young singers ask Joan how they should have a career like hers. There is no answer to that, as in fact we are not even sure why one singer has a major career and another succeeds not at all. Of course, phenomenal vocal cords help, and in fact there are a few great careers without them. On the other hand, hard work, much luck, physical and mental strength are needed, and above all, individuality." Well, it seems that they're now just about ready for us here. The stage, I believe, is set, and any moment now, I'm told that Richard Bonynge is about to join us at the Sydney Opera House. And as the lights dim, let's welcome back Richard Bonynge, conductor.
Marié, l'un des plus gros seigneurs de l'Allemagne. 150 quartiers de noblesse. Si Marie n'est pas heureuse avec ça.
Madame la Marquise, votre vieil intendant m'a dit que vous me demandiez.
Approchez-vous. Approchez-vous. Je vous le permets. Vous êtes un brave homme, un bon soldat, Sulpice.
Je crois, morbleu. Pardon.
Marie vous écoute. Vous avez sa confiance. Vous m'avez beaucoup aidé. Elle est plus docile. Grâce à mes soins, son ton et ses manières soldatesques ont presque entièrement disparu. et j'ai pu lui choisir pour époux l'un des plus illustres seigneurs de la Bavière, le duc de Crakentorp.
Et Marie? Mademoiselle Marie.
Elle a consenti, mais pas avec cet empressement que j'aurais désiré. Aussi je compte sur vous pour lui donner du courage. Nous signons ce soir même ici le contrat qu'on enverra au duc à la cour.
Une future duchesse, une vivandière.
Les bonnes hommes du pays prétendent que Marie est gauche et mal élevée. Je veux les confondre. Je veux que la voix charmante de Marie les ravisse, les transporte. Silence, la voici. Allons, approchez, approchez mon enfant. La romance perdue, oh la retrouver. C'est une chose exquise. Venez, descend.
Et mon angoisse monte.
Que dites-vous?
Moi, rien du tout.
Vénus descend dans la nuit opaque pour voir le Dieu qu'amour inspire. La musique est du maître Capariello. Sulpice t'entendit.
Superbe.
Eh bien, Marie, maudite innocente, pas de respect, faites silence. Toi, attention, nous commençons. Attendez.
Du Régiment.
gelosa Philomèle, de la gelosa Philomèle, diront les soupirs d'amour, diront les soupirs d'amour. Ma nièce, soupirons ensemble. Sulpice, c'est votre faute. Vous l'encouragez.
Certainement. C'est trop gaillard pour la circonstance.
Oh, aujourd'hui surtout que tu réunis les plus nobles têtes de pays, des têtes égales à la mienne. Oh, soyez raisonnable, mon enfant. Allons, embrassez-moi. Oh, tenez-vous droite. Levez la tête. Là, là. Comme ça. Oh, quelle jolie duchesse cela fera. Sulpice, venez avec moi. Elle est charmante.
camarade. Il faut les faire boire à ta santé.
Ah! Les événements! Toujours des soldats!
Hortensius, apportez tout de suite le meilleur vin de ma tante.
Par exemple!
Tu as entendu le mot d'ordre? Marche! Tous les trois réunis, quel plaisir, mes amis, quel bonheur, quelle ivresse! Tous les trois réunis, quel plaisir, quel bonheur, quelle ivresse! Nous sommes de bonheur! Tous les trois réunis, quel plaisir, quel bonheur, quel bonheur! Quel plaisir, nous voilà réunis, nous voilà réunis. Quel bonheur, mon souvenir,
Toi de guerre,
vous avez fui,
il reviendra,
venez Crakentorp,
il reviendra.
venez Crakentorp. Tous les trois réunis, quel plaisir, mes amis, quel bonheur, quelle ivresse! Tous les trois réunis, quel plaisir, quel bonheur, quel plaisir, quel bonheur! Réunis, quel plaisir, nous voilà réunis, nous voilà réunis, nous voilà réunis. Quel bonheur!
Pour moi, tu parles comme moi, mais tu comprends mes voeux.
Mais écoutez-moi donc,
Il me faut ta promesse.
et vous ne savez pas, écoutez-moi!
Et puisque j'y sais pas,
Écoutez-moi!
si tu en dois te
Vous ne savez pas, mais vous ne savez pas,
tous les trois réunis, quel plaisir, mes amis, quel bonheur, quelle ivresse. Tous les trois réunis,
quel plaisir, quel bonheur, quel bonheur, nous voilà réunis, quel plaisir, nous voilà réunis,
nous voilà
réunis,
nous voilà
réunis,
quel bonheur,
quel bonheur, quel bonheur!
Et j'ai vu un soldat ici, près de ma nièce. Comment, Sulpice? Vous avez perdu?
Voilà que ça commence.
Oh, très aimé. Qui êtes-vous, monsieur? Que voulez-vous? Que venez-vous faire ici?
Madame. Écoutez-moi, de grâce, pour me rapprocher de Marie, je m'enrôlais, pauvre soldat. J'ai pour elle risqué ma vie, et je disais dans
Ma nièce est promise. Dans une heure, on signe le contrat. Et je vous prie de quitter ces lieux à l'instant même.
Oh, mais non!
Restez, Sulpice.
Moi?
Nous sommes seuls. Sulpice, écoutez-moi. Vous êtes un honnête homme. Vous ne voulez pas perdre une pauvre femme qui se confie à vous.
C'est bien de l'honneur, Madame la Marquise.
La haute noblesse de ma famille, son désir de me faire un mariage digne de mon nom, m'avait condamné au célibat. J'avais 30 ans, et quoique belle alors, j'étais libre. Encore.
Pauvre fille.
Le capitaine Robert m'avait vu, et mes faibles attraits lui inspirèrent des pensées bien coupables.
On dit qu'il était...
Oh, charmant! Je l'aimais.
Oh!
Mais son départ nous sépara à Genève, où je l'avais suivi en secret. Quelque temps après, je vins l'attendre dans ce château, mais j'y revins seul, sans elle.
Elle? Qui donc?
Ma fille!
Marie!
Oui, ma fille, dont il fallait cacher la naissance au risque de me perdre.
Oui, j'y suis à présent.
Comprenez-vous maintenant pourquoi je tremble que mon secret n'éclate à tous les yeux? Comprenez-vous aussi que j'aime Marie et que me l'enlever, ce serait m'arracher la vie?
On ne vous l'enlèvera pas, Madame la Marquise. On ne vous l'enlèvera pas.
Ce mariage sauve tout. Il donne un nom, un rang à celle que je ne puis avouer et me permet de lui assurer toute ma fortune. Oh, décidez Marie à la contracter et j'aurai pour vous une éternelle reconnaissance.
Fiez-vous à moi, Madame la Marquise. Un cœur de soldat, ça ne trompe pas et ça ne trahit jamais.
Madame la Marquise! La société commence à venir le notaire qu'on est bibliothèque!
Oh, oh mon Dieu! Dans quel moment?
Madame la Duchesse de Crakentorp!
Bonjour, Madame la Marquise. Mais votre nièce n'est-elle point ici?
Oh, oh, elle va venir. Sa toilette qu'elle finit. Oh, elle attend à cœur de plaire à Madame la Duchesse.
Tout le monde est-il présent? Tout le monde, excepté la future. On ne se conduit pas ainsi avec la première noblesse du pays. Quel affront! Quel scandale! Oh, c'est incroyable! C'est épouvantable! Moi, je suis la duchesse de Crakentorp! Maintenant, j'obéirai. Ce contrat donné, je suis prête.
Je ne dois plus me taire. Marie était livre et la fille du régiment.
L'époque encore choisie que je
Joan Sutherland, the daughter of the regiment. And so this live simulcast from the Sydney Opera House comes to its satisfying conclusion in the well-ordered manner of romantic drama. Quite the reception it is too, with the streamers littering the stage. The next SO night at the Opera will be the Australian Opera's production of The Magic Flute, to be simulcast here on the ABC on Sunday, October the 5th. Once again, the conductor will be Richard Bonynge, and the cast includes Yvonne Kenny, Grant Wilson, Geoffrey Black and Donald Shanks. For tonight, this is Andrew Ollie wishing you good night.